Our next presenter is Ron Moore. I've been knowing Ron and now his family since about '97, so he's been doing drinking water for a long, long time, often in surface water treatment. But now he's come on with me in the Texas Optimization Program, which is the program they talked about this morning to help, one of the programs, to help water systems. He's got 30 years operating and management experience, and he has a little business in the Dallas-Fort Worth area where he does the actual backflow testing and repair. Does customer service investigations for a profession for many, many years. So he's got a great wealth of practical experience, and I'd like you to all help me welcome Ron.
Good afternoon, Austin. We'd love you guys. So we're going to talk a little about cross control here. Do I have any BPATs or CSIs in the audience? Love you guys. Y'all do a great job. Anyway, so let's get to it. So the overview, we're going to talk a little bit about hydraulics and the basics. We're going to talk about the 3 steps to starting a program, which is very important. Local regulations. TCQ gives y'all a lot of leeway on the regulations that y'all can do. And then customer service inspections. Y'all are the eyes and ears of the utility when y'all go out there. I mean, you guys got to just look, we got to just look at everything. We can't miss it. Testing the backflow prevention assemblies. That is very important. We do that all over. So backflow, it's the undesirable reversal flow of water or gases, you know, that when you lose pressure in your system. It's actually the one of the physical laws. You know, water will just go the least resistance. We're going to talk about back siphonage. That's by far the most common thing that's going to happen out there. It's just a form of backflow that's going to be a reduction. When you lose system pressure, that water is going to go, like we said, the least path, and it's going to go back into your distribution system. And that can be some really bad stuff sometimes, and we've got to prevent that. I mean, we just have to prevent that. Back pressure. Now, back pressure is going to usually be man-made. It's going to come from a pump, elevated, can possibly come from a water heater, but normally it's going to come from a pump that's going to overtake that system pressure or an elevated. Health hazard. It's a substance that may cause death or illness. That's the really bad stuff, and you want to be sure and use a health hazard type backflow. Of course, the best is if we can break the connection. Air gap is the best, by far. Air gap, but we can't always do that. So that's why we'll put an RPZ or a PVB or an SPB, depending on what the application is. Non-health is something that's not going to kill you, like let's say if we got coffee or beer or something like that in the water. It's not going to kill you, but some people may not like it. It depends on what it is. Now, looking at the swimming pool there, I can remember a time years ago, I was going to put one of those little HV vacuum breakers on the faucet out there. So I'm filling up the pool for the wife, and I didn't think about it. The city was up there flushing the fire hydrant. And I go in there and I drink the water. I'm like, man, this tastes kind of funny. What is it? It tastes like chlorine. So then I realized what was going on, turned it off, always use an air gap on that pool from now on. And of course I ran out there and checked the residual. Residual was good, so I was fine, but 3 steps to a backflow program. What do I need to know? What can I do right now? Starting a backflow program, there's going to be 3 questions. Do you have local regulations? This is very important that you get local regulations because that's something you're going to need. Do you do a customer service inspection? Well, you've got to decide how you're going to do the CSIs. You're going to do them in-house. You're going to have a third party. Are you going to kind of split that up? And then you're going to also have to decide who's going to pay for it. That's a big thing with utilities. I come from the utility side. I know the big thing. First question, who's going to pay for this? And then do you have a backflow test and maintenance program? Well, you do the same thing there. You're going to do those backflows in-house. You're going to put them on a third party. What I'm seeing in the DFW area a lot is they're using like a third party tracking system to do their backflows. And that seems to work out for a lot of people. That way you get rid of all that paperwork and stuff into it. A local authority. This is so important right here, that local authority. You have got to write out that plumbing ordinance, the regulations, and everything. And you want to write that up so that you have a point of entry, because it's very hard to go back with something and get them to sign a service agreement. There's a lot. So if you start it off right and get it done, and you know, you got a lot of good programs out there, TCQ, TOPS, they can help you set that up. I mean, they got a lot of good stuff on their website there on how to set up plumbing ordinances and service agreements and stuff like that. A lot of good stuff out there. So the local authority, you're going to need these elements. You're going to need that enforcement clause, big time. You're going to need that. Because you go out there and they'll tell you, well, you ain't coming on my land. They've refused to let me do a CSI before, but I went to Public Works Director and we got that straightened out. So, you know, once in a while you'll see that. Lead restrictions, man, there's so much going on with the EPA and stuff now. That's a given. Going to CSI, if there's any lead out there, take a lead test. I know, even if the house was built last week, always take a lead test. But fortunately now they're using a lot of PEX bands and stuff like that. Makes it so much easier, so much easier. Okay, like I said, that right of entry, and then you want to tailor those requirements to the system. Most cities are going to be a lot stricter than TCQ. I mean, you can do a lot less. You can do a lot more than TCQ tells you can. You cannot do less. Never do less than TCQ. Local authority, where do I start? It's a good question. Customers with existing service cannot suspend service for refusal to sign a service agreement by the Texas Public Utility Commission. This is very important. If you're starting a program and you got people out there, you cannot cut their water off if they refuse to sign that service agreement. So the only thing I know you can do is go out there and be very nice, talk to them, and try to get them to talk to them, tell them that explain to them what backflow is and everything like that. So you have to be a pretty good salesman with some people, no doubt, no doubt. New customer and water service started off right. TCQ has a lot of samples of ordinances and service agreements, like I said before. A lot of good things out there, a lot of help. TOPS, fantastic, come out there and help you. Customer service inspections. How do we find hazards and cross connections? Well, I've got a lot of stories there. But, I mean, I have been on, there was one I was doing south of Dallas. It was probably a $20 million project on 12 acres. Huge, doing a CSI. It was taking hours. Good contractor there with me. We're looking over everything. They had 5 or 6 RPZs where they had chemicals and all kinds of things. I'm going, man, this is good. We're going to pass this one. Then I get out there. He has an on-site sewer system. And then I look at the irrigation. We got to double check. I explained to that contractor, and he goes, what? He goes, I need to get a final. He goes, this is a $20 million project. He goes, and I think it was either for Google, Amazon, somebody big. And so I'm thinking, well, I'm sorry. So I said, you get it in there. I'll come out and take a look at it and show me the BPAT form. We got it tested. I'll pass it. He did. We got it done. But that's just one of the things you're going to see a lot of stuff. And as far as finding hazards, we've done a lot of commercial stuff. I haven't passed a restaurant the first time go around yet. I'm not saying don't eat at restaurants, but half time they don't have a RPZ on their carbonator. They'll have an ice machine, with the drain down in there and all that. It's like, guys, come on. But anyway, we get them all straightened out up there, and they're good. When we sign off on that, they're good to go. They're really good to go. They really are. So when do the customers need a CSI? All new construction, state of Texas, needs a CSI, period. End of story. That's 290 rules, always. Now, if a water purveyor suspects that they've got a hazardous condition there, like say they've got a well hooked up, they've got, they illegally put an irrigation system in, they can do a CSI on that house. They can. This is where your service agreement stuff is going to come in very handy, because you can do a CSI out there. And also, if they've done like major plumbing, like say they got a permit for the city, they're doing a major construction project and stuff, you might want to do a CSI out there. I would say yes. Customer service inspections. Here it says they got a CSI. Well, did they pass it or not? That's my question. So what are they going to do? So any resident or establishment, whether an actual or potential, now that potential leaves a broad area there on what we can call potential. Potential can be a lot of things, and a lot of that's going to be with the water purveyor, where a contamination hazard exists or may exist. So additional protection shall be required at the meter or in the form of an air gap or a backflow prevention. But also something I'd like to mention here, a lot of times on things, I was talking about restaurants, we do a lot of internal protection too. It's not just, we do a lot of stuff at the meter, but we do a lot of stuff out there. Maybe they've got filters or whatever. We're protecting those ice machines. We're protecting those carbonators. We're protecting, the coffee machines, all this stuff out there. It's not just at the meter. And, they may have one at the meter. They can have an RP or be protected at the meter. But we want to protect those people inside that building as well. We want to protect them. Let's talk a little bit about customer service inspections. CSIs are needed in 3 cases: suspected hazard, plumbing expansion, and anytime we have a new construction. They absolutely are needed. And so who can do a CSI? Well, if we're licensed by TCQ, we can do a CSI. That's what you're going to see most of the time. You're going to see a lot of plumbing inspectors. A lot of times they'll do the plumbing inspection and the CSI at the same time. They'll get that done, then they'll sign off on it, or maybe not. And then a plumber with a water supply protection specialist. Some of them will go and get their endorsement, and they'll do CSIs out there. But, a lot of times they're just going to have a third party do it. So customer service inspections, where do I start? Well, I start at the meter and go on, I ask them I start looking at backflow assemblies. They have hose vacuum breakers out there. And if they've got backflow assemblies, I want to see the BPAT forms. Did these get tested? If they did, I want to see them. Then I want to match up the serial numbers on it, A lot of cities require us to, they want to know the meter number, the size, the line going in. Fortunately, a lot of stuff now, they're doing PECs. If we've got any solder joints, we're going to have to do a lead test. We want to look under that sink. Is it tied into AVBs? Is that dishwasher tied in? Used to in the old days, they'd let us loop it, but plumbing code's different now. And bring everything up to an AVB up there coming up on the counter. So I'll look and I'll see that AVB there. The toilet, look in there and make sure you're below that critical line. You don't want to backflow there. Yeah, so there's a lot of things. Showers, I've turned them down. They'll have a shower head that can drop down into the shower. That's a no. So you talk to the contractor, they'll usually they're going to put it, or they can put an AVB up there so that she can't back siphon. Seeing a lot of that stuff. Now here it says, approach it like a triage. Well, that's somewhat true. If you got dangerous facilities, if you go up there and you got a chemical plant, you're going to put an RPZ on the front of it. That's just a given. If you've got an on-site sewer system with irrigation, it's going to need an RPZ. These are just givens on some of the things. If you've got a funeral home, it's going to have an RP. I went on a funeral home to do a BPAT. I'm not going to tell you where. Of course, it was in Texas. But I told the guy, I said, well, the relief valve failed. I said, you're out there in the construction. It's all kind of wobbly, don't look too good, old system. I said, and the meter's right there, all cracked and stuff. I said, why don't you the city to move the meter, get a plumber to come out here and put you a new RPZ in, call me and I'll come and test it. He said, okay. So he calls me in a few days. I go out there, and they have put that RPZ in upside down and below grade. I went and I asked them, I said, who put that RPZ in? And they said, oh, the plumber. I said, can I talk to him? So they tried to call him. Of course, the plumber didn't answer the phone. Of course not. And so I called the public works director. We're friends. I called him. I said, you're not going to believe this one. He goes, what? I'm like, man, I told him. He goes, you're kidding, right? He goes, Ron, tell me you're kidding. No, sir. I said, that's out here. I said, and this is on a funeral home. He said, I'm sending the city inspector out right now. The city inspector was not impressed, to say the least. He told him, said, you're going to get this fixed right away or we're shutting the water off. I'm surprised they didn't shut it off right there. They may have. They're going to shut it down because that's a serious thing. So anyway, to make a long story short, I went out later and it tested fine. They got it in right, so we did good on that, So let's talk a little bit more about customer service inspections. What to look at? Well, one of the things you do want to look at the form, but if you do from a third party, I guarantee you that's the latest the TCQ has, and I do a lot of those, but that would be something to look at. Incomplete certificate, remarks. Every time I do a CSI, I promise you there's remarks on there. I'll put on there I did a lead test or I didn't do a lead test. Why didn't I do a lead test? Because it had PEX, it had PVC. It didn't have any solder joints or brass connections. You know, why didn't I do a lead test? It's just because I didn't have to. And if that is a building that was before, you know, more than a few years old, look real close under the sinks everywhere. See if you can find a solder connection. Do a lead test on it. If that one comes up positive, take a picture. Take pictures of everything. You fail a CSI, you need pictures of it. You need to be able to back that up. Because I guarantee you they're going to call that Public Works Director. I can promise you they're going to call it, and he's going to call you. Or he's going to see the pictures, and he's going to go, yeah, that's a fail. You got to make sure it's conducted by a properly licensed individual. Well, that's kind of common sense there, but yeah, not just anybody can go out there and do one. You want to keep those CSIs for 10 years. But I say just, you know, I never throw nothing away, so I got every CSI I ever did, so it's somewhere. Anyway, testing backflow assemblies. Can I cross-connect? Well, absolutely not. You cannot cross-connect. It says, no water connection from any public drinking water supply system shall be allowed by residents, or this also commercial can be established where an actual or a potential, there's that word potential, contamination hazard exists for the public water facilities. You got to make sure the public is protected at all times from this. That's why we do a lot of BPATs. Testings. What should I install? Well, if you're a BPAT, you're really not supposed to install them. You should get a plumber or a licensed irrigator to install them. Unless you're doing it for the city that you work for, I say you can do that. But if you're not working for that city, like a third party like me, if that BPAT or that assembly has to be broke loose from that water line, it's going to need to be permitted by an irrigator or a licensed plumber, master plumber. Let me put that in there. And see, the type of backflow prevention assembly required shall be determined by the specific potential hazard identified. And there's some 290 rules on that, on the following in the appendix. And, you know, TCQ has a lot of stuff on what's hazards. And, you know, guys, a lot of stuff is common sense, too. I mean, you know, if you got some really bad stuff out there, you know you need to put an RPZ on it. This really. I mean, TCQ might not have it all. I mean, they're going to have stuff like car washes, funeral homes, chemical plants. All these kind of stuff are just given. Those are going to have to be high hazard. Irrigation system with an on-site sewer system. Yeah, all of that. All right, testing your BPATs. That's your hazards. Okay, that's just a list of things on the website that's going to tell you a list. And they can't list all the hazards out there. There are so many. So a lot of that's going to be, I mean, I would always say go and talk to the city. Know the city you're working for. Know what their ordinances are. Know what they want, and then go out there and talk to them. And if they're out of TCQ rules, be real careful how you say that. Don't just go. Just be real nice, you know, when you talk to them, because and a lot of them, you know, they're trying, they're struggling out there, and they're doing a good job. Testing BPATs. Okay, so we installed an assembly, now what? Well, all backflow prevention assemblies are required to be tested upon installation. High hazard has to be tested annually. Now, there's a lot of cities that are testing all of them annually. I see that all over the DFW. And there's a lot of cities, some that we talked about, that are really, really good. If you take a double check out, you're putting an RP in. I've seen that all over the DFW area. Some of those cities are really, really good. And you know, like I said, they're going to require a permit. They're going to want an irrigator or a licensed plumber, depending on what it is. So, key regulations. Backflow prevention assemblies, which are installed to provide protection against health hazards, must be tested and certified to be operating within specs at least annually. Now, that being said, if you're doing something else there, you know, you can test it more than annually if you want. If you suspect it's not working, or I don't know how many RPZs I've walked up to, and they're just gushing water everywhere and that kind of thing. So, obviously, we have a problem. That, you know, if you're a BPAT, probably got a foul #1 check. So, but anyway, Testing BPATs, in summary, only done by a licensed backflow prevention assembly tester. Now, when I was at the water plant, we used to work on some assemblies once in a while, but we always had one of the guys with a license test it. But that's also for for my plant, our city, we can do that. The minimum requirements: test upon installation, at least annually for those on health hazards, maybe done more frequently if a local authority endorses. So a lot of right now that I'm seeing in there, they're doing, and I've seen some, and I kind of agree with this, like your double checks, I've seen them do every 2 years. You know, TCQ says you just got to do it if they work on it or when installed. But I like the ones that say, well, we don't have to do it annually. That's a little bit too much on some of the low hazard, but we do it every 2 years. We go out there and test them, and I kind of like that myself. So reviewing the test forms. Well, I'm going to tell you, if you're doing it for a third-party tracking company, if you don't do it right, it's going to kick it out. So what to look for? Pre-2019 or alternate form. I don't know why you would use that. It's all on the TCQ website. You can pull those off really easy. And before I got to do BPAT, I put as much information on that form before I get there so I don't have to do it in the field. I mean, you know, a lot of that stuff, you already know the address, you know the water purveyor, you know his ID number, you know all of that good stuff. So, incomplete test form. There again, that would be, city's going to kick it back, third party, they're going to kick it back. You know, don't do that. I mean, you're not going to put a form in that doesn't have everything, especially as strict as they are up there where I'm at. You know, they're just going to kick it right back. They may make you go out and retest. If you mess up the form, a lot of cities tell you, we want to retest. They can do it. Remarks. Most BPAT forms, you want to put a remark. If you failed it, you want to put what you failed it. What you going to do to repair it. If you repaired it, you want to do what you put it. Only use OEM parts in those out there. Only. Do not repair one with something from Home Depot. No, no, no. Could have lead, could have stuff. So go with a proper manufacturer there. I mean, if I'm working on a watch, I'm going to only use OEM watch parts. End of that story. Valid tester's license. Now, and another thing that I don't know if they put that on there, but those gauges have got to be tested annually too, and those have got to be current. If you don't, they're going to kick that right back out. So anyway, should I accept the form? Well, that's going to be the city. They're going to look over that and all that. Here again, the BPAT forms. We've got to keep them for 3 years. Guys, I would keep them, you know, for as long as that BPAT's out there, if you know, especially if you're a city. You got those BPATs out there, I'd keep them from now on. So testing BPATs, spreadsheet programs. Like I said, most of the time I see third-party tracking systems, you know, doing all that software and stuff. Programmable due data. That's where your tracking stuff comes in. I really like those myself because, you know, they send you a letter and they tell you it needs to be done and all that stuff. And then third-party record keeping. That's where, you know, companies, we see a lot of that up there in the Metroplex. You know, you'll see the city of Dallas, city of Fort Worth, they use that. Most of the Metroplex, most all the Metroplex up there. And then, you know, if you're a city or municipality, you kind of have to ask yourself, what's the best way for you to track the backflow information? If you're a little small city, you may be able to keep it with that. If you're a city like Dallas, Fort Worth, probably Austin, I mean, how are you going to keep up with hundreds of them a day? That would be hard. But, okay. So, is there any questions? Well, that's a very good question, and I would go out there and talk to them and be very nice to them and, you know, just kind of explain what a backflow program is and how it can help save lives out there and keep people from getting sick and see if you can get them to do it. But if they absolutely refuse, one option you may have is to go put a backflow assembly yourself for the city. Now, if you're putting an RPZ on somebody's home, on their meter, be very careful of thermal expansion because, you know, you've now made a closed system. If something goes wrong with that water heater in there, and you bust a pipe, we could be talking about thousands of dollars. So if you could be nice, and if they are going to let you, my suggestion, if you are going to put an RPZ, if you've got a city plumber, have him go out there and permit it and put it in. You know, or the city guys, if they're sure there's not going to be thermal expansion there, because
The only thing that I would add is that on TCQ's website, we have a little brochure that you can just print off, and when you're following up on that visit, you can have that to give to them as well.
yeah,
It mentions how we're trying to protect public health and actually their public health.
right. And I know that when they see that clause where you can cut their water off, they can be very resistant to that. They can be like, no.
Can you explain a little bit more about the ice machine?
Sure. I mean, if you've got an ice machine, you've got the drain down in the sewer drain, it could backflow back up through there if you got into a backflow condition. Now, a lot of the new ice machines that I'm seeing, they have a built-in air gap. That's great. They put a built-in air gap. If they put filters on it, though, we could still backwash, could we still backwash through the filters? Well, that's kind of up to the city there and what they want to do. But an ice machine can, but like I say, a lot of them, you can open them up, or it will say it on there, air gap installed. If I see an air gap installed, I still like to see it above the, air gap above the sewer drain where they're draining out. But
Do you know the distance from the drain it has to be?
at least an inch. But it depends on the size of the drain line. So you want a minimum of an inch and twice the size of your drain line coming in. In other words, if you had you want to get it like if you had a 2-inch, you want to get it about 4 inches up. If you have anything, but everything's a minimum of 1 inch above that drain. That's a good question. Thank you.
So Ron, the risk of an ice machine is primarily, I would assume, siphonage from the water flowing into the ice machine?
Yeah, we don't want it to back siphon into the ice itself there and be contaminated.
Okay, so if the ice drops into a tray rather than, like in a hotel, where you
Right.
put your thing in there, the drain is connected to the dispenser area.
Right.
Not to the machine itself. Does that still pose a backflow, or is that an air gap?
I would think that if that's not connected, if it's not a physical connection, I'd call that an air gap. I mean, I would look at it, and like I say, you're going to see so many things out there. You're going to have to kind of look at it, and if all else fails, just talk to the city and kind of see what they want to do.
So if the drain is connected to the ice bin, it probably is it's a cross connection.
It's possible.
If it's connected to the dispenser piece, it's probably not.
Probably not as long as we have an air gap.
And the air gap in the
Yeah.
dispenser.
As long as we have an air gap, usually if I see an air gap, I feel a lot better about it.
Can y'all not hear me? That's unbelievable. Oh, got it, okay.
But good question, Jack.
Hi there. So with a lot of new residential construction, I'm seeing irrigation systems being installed that has the potential for chemical injection. Because of that potential, does that require an RPZ? It seems that many do not know that that chemical injection point is there or use it, but because of the potential, does it require higher than a double check?
Well, as of right now, if it had the chemical injection on it, yes, it would be. But if it doesn't have it yet, it has the potential. I'm going to say that's going to be up to the city. Now, what I would probably do in the CSI is note that to the city so that public works director can look at it and they'll, under remarks. I would say that it doesn't mean that I would fail the CSI. Now, if it had chemical injection, by all means, you're putting RPZ in there. I mean, end of story. Or if it has an OSF on it, But one of the problems that I see is an irrigator can go back and put that chemical injection in. Now, if he doesn't permit that and stuff, that puts it back on the irrigator, his license, on that possible cross connection there. But all we can do on the CSI is go back and note it to the city, and the city may want to turn it down. You can put a big old question mark there with them, or call the public works director. Like I say, there again, it depends on, what they want to do. But if I agree with you, that would be a potential, if they can go in there and pump that. So I haven't run across that, but if I saw that, I'm going to the city. We'll talk about that before I pass that CSI and see what they want to do. So, but thank you for that question. Yes, sir.
You said there were 3 different avenues for addressing backflow prevention. Local authority and enforcement, CSIs, and what was the third one?
Let's see, there was the CSIs, there's the local authorities, and of course you got all the TCQ regulations too. And you can always, like I say, you can always do a lot more, and most of them do a lot more than what TCQ does. Because, okay.
Yes, sir. What would cause back siphonage on the ice machine?
Well, it's going to be just like anything, and also you can get in a situation where the ice has melted some and becomes liquid, but we don't want an ice machine running into a sewer system, We want to make sure it's air gapped there.
So for the non-hazard devices, maintenance and testing, like it's required annually, right? But for the hazard connections, but for the non-hazard connections, is there an industry standard? Some cities require it every year, some cities 3 years, and some cities 5 years, but is there a industry standard like 2 years?
If it's high hazard, it's annually.
Right.
That's everybody. But if it's like a low hazard double check, there's been some out there for 10 years haven't been tested because they were tested when they were put in. That's what TCQ says. So it's going to be up to the city. Now, I would recommend testing them, Of course, I'm a BPAT. I'm going to say let's test them, annually. But anything low hazard, they don't have to. That's just strictly up to how the city wants to write that ordinance. And when the powers that be are setting up that ordinance, they need to think about that because the plumbing code says that they have to be tested, annually, all backflows. But TCQ says low hazard, you can put them on installation, or if you work on them, or that kind of stuff, and then test them. So.
Thank you so much, Ron.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it. And I want to say a special thanks, Alicia, to you and Catherine and TCQ. You guys are great.